Embiid kind of messed up everything, right? In terms of the game and just overall going 5 for 17 to like, it's crazy to me that as soon as I decided to upload my MVP case video about Joel, because it had to go out yesterday, and it was perfect because they were playing the Nets, I was thinking that Joel was going to have a really good game and then that everything would just be topical and would all work out, right? I was so wrong. If you just look at the totals, he finished with 27 points. He finished with 12 rebounds. He didn't have a bad game if you're just looking at the final points and rebound numbers. But again, everything is about context. The man went 15 for 19 from the free throw line. And I don't subscribe to the notion that you can blame the player necessarily for the amount of calls that they're getting. The refs are the ones that blow the whistle ultimately in the end. And it's ultimately not the players who are writing the rules for themselves. So being able to finesse the refs and get a whistle in your favor, as unlikable, as slow as the game might be to you. And there are times where I hate free throws. I don't necessarily like watching Joel and James Harden shoot 1,000 free throws a game, but I also understand that that's part of it and that they're only doing what's best for the team, which is getting free points. That being said, when you go 15 for 19 from the line and only finish with 27 points, that paints the picture that you were having a shitty game, which was what Joel was doing. Finished with 4 turnovers, 4 fouls. Realistically, he played like garbage. And James Harden even played worse, which is hilarious. But I don't want to talk about James Harden today. I'm going to talk about Joel Embiid. That performance doesn't necessarily mean that I'm taking him out of the top 3 for MVP voting. I think it's hard to forget a game like this, but if you ultimately sweep it into the large ensemble of games that we already have, you're still looking at a very, very strong case for MVP. So I'm not budging on that notion. I am budging on the notion that Joel Embiid is no longer number 2. I mean, there have been a couple games actually. These past, I believe 5 games, he's been, his field goal percentage has just been wonky. It is kind of appropriate to call him a free throw merchant. Giannis, I think, is my new number 2 now. Joel I think he's starting to shit the bed a little bit too often now. And in the video that I, highlighted his best arguments, I was talking about January and how January was such a strong month that it bolstered him up to even number 1 in the voting. I stay objective over in that series. Raw thoughts, though, I'm very subjective. And subjectively, Joel no longer has a valid case for number 2. Because as I mentioned, the bad ones are starting to pile up more and more. We're starting to see that, he might simply just be free throws. And while that is an over-exaggeration, and then that's not true at all because he's not just free throws, the optics of what's been going on lately are kind of pointing to that now. And it's not a good look for him. And it's not a good look for the Sixers because they got absolutely demolished. And he was part of the reason why. If we take a step back from just looking at the optics for Joel, just look at what this looks like for the Sixers as an organization and as a fan base. You berate Ben Simmons. You don't want him on your team anymore, fine. He sits out. He doesn't do it. You're heckling him. You're berating him, harassing, whatever. Now comes time for you guys to make the trade. You make the trade, get rid of Ben Simmons. He's off your team and you get a superstar in return. You're looking good. And then your first meeting with this team that you just traded your dead weight for beats you by 30. So now a team that thought they were getting rid of such a paperweight and getting a superstar firepowered offensive weapon in return, it looks bad. And this is one game. This is not indicative of the whole season. This is just one game. But in this game, everything looked bad for the Sixers. And I think this is a matchup, if we do end up seeing it in the playoffs, this is not a matchup that's going to be favorable for Philadelphia. And I think the Nets showed exactly what they're going to do to a lot of teams in the playoffs this year. And that includes players like Seth Curry scoring 24 points every now and then on 10 of 14 shooting. It involves him and Patty Mills going for a combined 6 of 12 from 3. It includes James Johnson playing an all-around game. And then naturally, KD and Kyrie both scored over 22 points. And then you have a whole recipe of high-powered offense that cannot really be kept up with efficiently. You put that together with a couple of bad games from a higher seed, and you're looking at the Nets being an underdog and upsetting every team that they come across this playoff season. So if the Sixers want to have any sort of shot at getting to the finals or even the Eastern Conference Finals, they have to go through the Nets, which is an insane proposition to think about because the Nets are currently the 8th seed. But this game right here, it was a lot to digest. You can look at it from both sides and see just the sheer amount of bad that came out of this game and the amount of good that also came out of it. Because the good side is that the Nets look so good. They look like a team that's going to cause a lot of problems in the playoffs, and they don't even have their best defender. And then on the flip side, the negative part of it is that the Sixers now look like a team that might be a joke. Take that as you will. This is just a one-game reaction, and this is how I feel. So, yeah, I don't know. Sixers Twitter was absolutely hilarious last night. I had to catch up on all the tweets this morning. So I was just in my bed at like 7 a.m. just reading all the tweets. And it's hilarious when the Sixers lose badly because their own fans turned on them so quick. And it's so funny. And I get a kick out of it every single time. They tried to start a fuck Ben Simmons chant and then got blown out while Ben Simmons was on said bench just smiling. It was a bad look. Everything about it, the game being in Philly, how riled up the fans were before the game, the fans leaving in the third quarter, all of it. Terrible look for the Sixers. Yeah, those are my raw thoughts, man. Let me know what y'all think.